Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. Our next guests have been working together for going on 20-something years. They've done a whopping 7 movies together, and I'm not even sure if that's the correct number. They will correct me on that when they get out here. Now they're bringing their director-star duo to Cinemax with Jett, where Carla Gugino stars as a professional thief, just out of prison, who's brought right back into the game. Let's take a look at Sebastian Gutierrez's Jett.
Staying out of trouble?
Keeping it real simple. Work, family, home.
Where have you been hiding?
Plain sight. Go to the safe and open it.
Why don't you run from me? What are you wondering? What do you know?
You're the only person that can do this job. And I need this done.
Honestly, I thought that I would be.
As of today, you work for me.
I knew the risks.
I want to end.
I don't care who gets hurt.
Are you a friend?
You run the job, but we run the show.
I want to end me. I want to end me.
What happened?
I got shot.
You got shot?
A shot. You got a shot. It's important to know what you're good at. I'm a thief. That's what I'm good at.
When we all fall asleep, where do we go?
Everybody, please welcome writer-director Sebastian Guttierrez and the great Carla Gugino. Let's hear it. Hi. Thank you so much for being here. Congratulations on the show. Stylish, beautiful, wonderful, amazing performance by you. Perfectly cast. I think that's because this really starts at home with the two of you, right? Like, you have a rough draft of an idea, I would imagine, and you bring it to her and pitch it to her and see if she's interested?
Well, yes and no. I mean, it definitely starts at home. What usually happens, or at least in this case, was I like presenting the thing written to her and see if she will do it. I find that I'm a little superstitious, so I'd rather
Has she ever said
it.
no?
There's been a couple of things where she's like, I'm not sure about this, and have you ever said no?
I don't know if I've ever said a flat out no because I love his writing so much. You know, when you're reading a script, it doesn't really matter who's written it. It either works or it doesn't work. And Sebastian's scripts, I can say, even though I'm sitting next to him, so you'll think I'm partial, are the most enjoyable scripts to read. As you can probably imagine watching the show, it's just, he has this really vital energy in his writing. No, I mean, we've had things where I'll give thoughts or maybe there might be some piece of material that I'm more inclined to do than something else. I mean, something like
Or
this.
she comes around to it a couple of years later. She's like, that was pretty good. Maybe we should do that.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that you find in your writing, Sebastian, which I really like, is that you find ways to color all of the characters, like just outside the lines a little bit. Like most writing for the purposes of telling a story are driven solely by plot and driving that plot forward. You find ways while driving that plot to make each character pop a little bit and give them maybe a monologue here or a story here that just makes them a little more idiosyncratic than you would expect in your sort of standard crime fare, which this ends up becoming not that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very perceptive point. That really comes from books. You know, I'm a big fan of crime novels, and people like Elmore Leonard do this on a constant basis, or did this on a constant basis, where they would have characters that were side characters in one story become the main characters in another story and create a sort of universe. And that kind of storytelling has always been really interesting to me. So in the very specific example of Jett, without giving too much away, you know, it's about this pragmatic thief who's retired, who gets drawn into the proverbial last job. And the fallout of this job forms the basis of the next 8 episodes. So all the characters that you meet in the first episode, even people that have 2 lines that you think this person's not coming back, are actually the characters that we follow in the whole story.
Now, it's you said 9 episodes, right? Entirely that you wrote and directed, that you're basically in essentially every frame of.
Yes.
You two have worked together on how many projects now at this point? Is this project number 8 or 9?
Something like that.
Something like that, except this one, by virtue of being 9 hours made as basically a big long movie, was really like 4.5 movies.
Yeah, it really
just
felt
in
like
one.
it was for sure the most significant endeavor we've ever done together. And also, we had really great partners at HBO Cinemax who were really supportive of the vision of the show that he wanted and that we wanted, and so therefore, and we cross-boarded it all like one big movie. So we didn't, the advantage of the fact that he had all the scripts written were that
should
we
explain. Do you
Yeah,
want to
go
explain
ahead.
what that means?
Yeah.
I mean, TV. A lot of times how TV is done, even though that's changing, is you shoot a first episode, and then it gets picked up, and then you shoot a second episode, a third episode, and a lot of the problems, even though we're in a great moment for television right now, a lot of the problems that TV still has is that it's still basically acting the same way that it acted in the 1950s, which is you get like twice or three times the amount of time and money to do the pilot, and then you're expected to duplicate it on a weekly basis as writers are trying to come up with stories,
Yeah, I was actually having this conversation with someone last night of how the expectations of television have not caught up to the economic model that's still being
Absolutely.
used. And we use an example of a TV show who recently had set up their character for death in the second season, their main character for death in the second season so well, but then couldn't do it because that was their star. And so they had to just consistently backtrack and sort of go forward and then backtrack because they couldn't do the thing that the story actually required of it at that point.
Yeah, no, it's a
Not that Jett should die at any point.
well, spoiler alert, second episode.
Psychic.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because the Brits figured this out a while ago, and they do a lot of seasons that are 8 episodes, or and obviously if you have less episodes, you can have better quality. So my idea was I'd never done television, and I thought I don't know, like if you write we were talking about this backstage, is like if you write a pilot and you're lucky enough to set it up, the people reading it, they might have different ideas of where the story is going to go. So what I did was in the last couple of years in between real jobs, I wrote the whole season out on spec, which my agents were like, well, that's not a good idea, which maybe it wasn't a good idea, but I just wanted to see if I could do it. I'm like,
What
I
are
know
the real jobs?
in between like day jobs writing movies for the studios and
Gotcha,
stuff like
okay.
that, because the kids have to go to school and stuff. But so then when I had the whole thing, then I presented it to different companies, and my naive idea was I'll just say take it or leave it, and somebody will take it. And it took a while, but eventually HBO said we have some notes, but yes, we like it. This is the whole thing. Let's do it.
It's interesting also, I think, probably having done this for as long as we've both done it, actually. There's a point where you go, I don't want to make something if I don't have a really good shot at making it the way that I want to make it. Because I, for sure, as an actor, you come into things all the time and you have really high hopes. And sometimes the filmmakers deliver and the studio delivers and you're so thrilled that it's turned out. And sometimes even better than you hoped it would be. But oftentimes you end up in a situation where what you thought it was, it isn't. And so in this case, I think...
We're shooting what today? Where'd the script go?
Yeah, or you just go, oh, wait, that major scene where it made you understand everything about my character is no longer in the movie, those kind of things. And they happen often. So I think both of us, I think it actually is those hard knocks that got us to the place of going, you know what, we don't want to make this show unless we can do it right. And it's hard to do something right. It takes it takes a very clear vision and a lot of passionate and talented people to execute it, and the support of the studio, obviously. But it was 4 years from the initial time that we pitched it to when we were able to make it.
But also in the case of Jett, Jett is not a high concept, really. So, TV, exploded in such a way right now that when you sit down, every meeting we had, people were like, we love the script, we love the writing, we like Carla for this, we love Carla for this, it's fantastic. But you kind of get a sense that, is it a criminal in space? And you're like, no, it's not a criminal in space. So it's like, it will be very execution dependent what will make this good or not, and I think we've gotten to the point where there's so many shows.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Are you saying that basically they're always looking for the high concept angle like everything needs to have like that great pitch that...
Because there's 500 shows on the air, so they're like, well, how is this going to break through the noise? I get it. How is it going to be Game of Thrones? You're like, well, it's not Game of Thrones, but it can be like really cool storytelling and exciting and fulfill all these other things that, now that television is where characters have mutated to, which is really great, you can have these long-form, character-driven stories that people get really invested in if they're thought out.
I also don't think you need high concept when it comes to crime.
Right.
People love crime. No matter what's been happening in movies or TV, everybody will gravitate towards thieves
agree.
and
It is.
heists and criminals,
Yeah, and it's great. It's just great characters come from those circumstances. It's. I also think that in terms of the medium of television and doing something like this where you are having to make 9 hours relatively quickly, I think the best training is independent cinema. And the filmmakers who have really made good pieces for a small amount of money in a very small amount of time are actually the ones who are really well suited to making television shows.
Why is that?
Well, because I think that if you come from really big movies, you have the luxury of time and space, and you can spend, a whole day on a half a page. Right. Whereas, in television, you're more shooting 7 to 10 pages a day, say. And so we did these micro budget movies that were really cool experiments where we shot 10 pages a day every day, and we made a movie in 10 days, for example.
Like Electrolux. And,
Yeah, exactly. And so I think those were really
Those were really good training for this.
Yeah.
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 Training, because when you got to this, you were doing like 7 to 10 pages a day, basically, and
A little bit
moving
less than
quickly.
that. A little bit less than that, but you're not overwhelmed by the idea. A lot of people are like, "How could you make that good?" And like a big, I hadn't done television before, but and television has gotten much more cinematic recently. But it's still, a lot of it is still done in conventional ways, and by that I mean it's still, we have this scene with 3 people, and it's a master, and then a medium close-up, and 3 close-ups, and it really was for me when I saw Steve Soderbergh's The Knick, which came out on Cinemax, where I was like, oh, and he was properly doing this thing in a cinematic way in which like he would edit on camera and choose who the scene belongs to and just concentrate on that person. And it's like the biggest nightmare when you're doing television or film is if you have a scene in a conference room with 10 people around the desk at the table, this is entire day spent on this thing. Got to show this person, that person, this, and Soderbergh was doing stuff there where he was just focusing on one person and then doing a close-up of a glass of water and getting out of the scene. And what it did was it gave it this very visceral momentum. And when I saw that, I was like, well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like that's the one thing television doesn't have a lot of right now is like, so Jett is very stylized. The shots are very color saturated, very composed. It's very much, like a movie.
How do you, and this might be too in the weeds, but one of the economic pieces of television is, especially when you're doing 9 episodes, is having sets that you can consistently return to, because you can't necessarily bank on pulling a different location for every scene in an episode. How do you then write that into your series? Do you take that into mind, or is that something that's naturally there?
I didn't when I wrote it, but this is what Carla was referring to earlier. We didn't do Jett episode 1, then episode 2, episode 3. Once HBO said, we will do it with you guys, what I said to them was, we're going to make it all as if it was a movie. And by that, I mean, the scripts were already written, so we weren't coming up with stuff as we went along. So every scene that took place in the studio, whether it's in episode 1, 3, 6, or 9, was done at the same time in the
like
schedule. So we didn't
Charlie's
need to come back to that set.
Hotel room or in,
And this helped with the actor schedules.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this is a very cost efficient. This is just in a movie you would not keep coming back 2 weeks later to the same diner where you shot the scene.
The only disadvantage is that we were in Toronto and we started in the summer and we ended in the winter, and almost all of our exteriors were at the end. And I was wearing, at one point, no shoes, but always a little dress and a trench coat, and I was like, in August, this was so nice. And then I was, purple.
Because
And
there are some scenes with torrential rain where
Yeah.
I'm like, Carla, you look a little blue. Can you try and be less blue in this scene? Just for
I was
one
like, I
take.
cannot move my mouth. I am talking
freezing.
like this.
So you guys have been working together now for 20 years or something or so, right? Your first movie together was 98?
I was like 1 year old. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
really weird.
And how has it worked between the two of you over the course of all of these projects that you've done together? How have you found the shorthand? Has there ever been a moment where you didn't get along, you didn't really know how to get through a scene or something, and you had to figure it out?
I don't know. What's interesting is that we are both pretty strong-willed, passionate people with strong perspectives. But thankfully, we share a very similar aesthetic. And when we're on set, I think the relationship aspect of it is really the relationship between a director and an actor.
For a long time, people in the crew didn't even realize
For
that
years,
we were,
like several of our first projects. But I do think the thing that I would say is we fill in each other's blanks in a good way. Like our strong suits are different, and so that's really a good thing. And also trust. I mean, I think with any director, I can speak personally, the thing that I need the most is to trust their vision. Because if you're directing yourself, and sometimes you are in a situation where you realize you're working with a director who's really good technically, but has no language with actors, and you realize, oh, I'm going to be directing my own performance, and they're going to be shooting it, and you.
Who are some of those?
And you can do,
Kidding.
and troublemaker, and you can do, you can be. You can be good, and you can be very good, and occasionally you can be great, but it's hard to be transformative. It's hard to really jump off the cliff and make mistakes, and because always on the side of mistakes, on the other side of it, you find it's usually a great discovery. So you might have one take that's really like, God, that was not at all what I wanted to do, and then you'll find the gold. And
But if you have a director that you don't trust,
then you don't even want that stuff in the editing room.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
they might just be like, print it,
Yeah.
great, and you're like,
Yeah.
no, that was the mistake.
No, it's really so, and it's the thing, it's a difference between I do theater as well, and theater is an actor's medium, that you're up there on stage, and so the director's got to hope that you do what they told you to do.
Well, you have that extended rehearsal period as
For
well,
sure.
where you can dig through all of those mistakes and have bad ideas lead to more understanding of
Yeah.
the language.
And with Carla, because we are together, I often, when she's on screen, I hope she does what I want her to do, because if she doesn't, then no. But shorthand, which is what you mentioned before, for me is the key, which is, all filmmakers that I really admire are people who have had a company of actors that they put in different movies in different roles. And Carla is the center of that company of actors for me, and she has worked with many different people. So, there are people in this cast that she worked with in Roadies or in Haunting of Hill House. So she operates as a magnet for all these people. And the more people, it's like any endeavor, but it's like, if you're gonna go to battle, you want people around you that are people that you trust. And there's so many crazy variables that come up on shooting, because nothing goes according to plan, that you want the highest amount of people in your cast and crew that know what you mean, and you don't have to worry about that. It makes it a lot more fun. It makes it like a game.
For sure. I think one of the great things about us both producing this is that we were really, from the casting from the start, was about getting really talented people who are right for the part, who are also of like mind, and who are really hard workers and really passionate and want to make it a great productive set.
What is of like mind for the two of you with a project like this? Because, my opinion, I would think that you would want people who have some of the same cinematic language and maybe even sort of literary language as well going into this, or is that not that important?
Well, that you can actually, which is interesting, of every project you can inform, educate people on, So I do, for example, for the cast, I made a list of movies and why they should watch them, and common references
Sebastian's
are
very
super
unique
important.
and great that way.
What can I
Like
ask,
curating a playlist.
What was that? What was on your playlist?
For movies?
Yeah.
Well, there was stuff like, for example, Soderbergh's Out of Sight, which is a great Elmer Leonard adaptation, which the tone
Maybe the best
is
of the
similar
Elmer
to
Leonard
this.
adaptations.
I think the best.
I
And
rewatched that recently. I was really young when it first came out, but I rewatched it last
so was
summer.
Carla.
So good.
You were both
It
one.
blew me away. I was like, this is a perfect movie. Yeah.
No, what Scott Frank and Soderbergh and Danny DeVito, who had a big hand in that, did with that tone, which is similar to Jett in that there's sexy banter, it's playful, it's color coordinated, but the violence is real and it's got consequences and bad things happen, is really important because it's a breezy thing. And Jett is a really fun, it's not depressing, it's not dark, but suddenly bad things happen, and that's part of the world. So that was on the list, definitely, and movies like Body Heat, Lawrence Kasdan's Body Heat was there. That's, again, a great noir, sexy, but really well-plotted character stuff. Jean-Pierre Melville was a French filmmaker who I'm a big fan of, and his Gangster Psycho with Alain Delon, there was a lot of stuff there. Don Siegel movies, many, many things. There are things to take from, Charlie Varick. There's many character-driven, crime things. I think why crime is so interesting in fiction or in movies that you were mentioning earlier is because our lives are not like that, most of us, except, for that person over there. Our lives are not like that, but it's a great platform to tell stories about friendship and family and loyalty, and the stakes are really high. It's like you're gonna get killed if you screw up, and that's compelling.
Now, all of your projects mainly have had Carla in them, I would say, right? Primarily, like 95%.
She's really good. It's hard
great.
not to write her in.
But I'm curious. She goes off and makes movies with other people quite often, or in between projects with you. What is it like when she comes
Very
back?
lonely, yeah. Is this an intervention?
Writing
Is this-
writing does
Carla,
take
we
a
wanna
long
talk
time.
to you.
He's always working. When I'm away working, you're always working on something else as well. It's just that he's creating the thing.
But do you notice
have
that
to
she comes
schedule
back
time.
with a sort of a new set of tools quite often that she's picked up on other sets or working with other directors and writers that you can then utilize and exploit for your projects? Exploit
She
sounds
comes back with mostly bad habits that I then have to go, that might be the way these people do it. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, no, for sure. Every project you acquire new skills and learn new things and have to navigate new circumstances. So, but yeah, I guess at this point, yeah, it's funny. It's almost like I think also because we share so much in life during those projects that most of
talking between
most of
projects,
those
yeah.
people he also knows, and there's he and Mike Flanagan have had a lot of conversations about work and passions and things like that. So I think the various filmmakers that I've worked with too.
Carla always invites me to the other sets. She's like, come visit the set. I'm like, I don't want to visit somebody.
Sebastian
else's
lasts
set.
about
the most
20
boring
minutes on
thing. I
set.
want to be on my own
Like,
set.
I got to be directing.
And they all the sets are the same. It's like, we're doing this shot. You're like, oh, yes.
You're
very
not
interesting.
in that center like 5 people on a set. You're not really, like if you're not the DP or the sound guy or the actors or the director.
That's why it's so convenient being the director. You're involved in everything, even if you do very
Yeah.
little. You just hire people that are really good, and you're like, yes.
I do think
have to ask.
for your projects though, in terms of Like Mind, meaning Like Mind, what I meant was just the right spirit on set, which is kind of like you'll go to the wall for the piece, and you are, I mean, it's just there's no reason to work with people that aren't enjoyable to work with because there are too many talented people.
No screamer.
That are, yeah. It's a family. I mean, I'm Italian, so I always want to have family dinners, and it's very much of that. But I would also say, in terms of your writing, it's also a facility with language is necessary, and there's certain technical things too, like Sebastian. His dialogue is there's a musicality to it, and you want people who get that and enjoy that because it's
People who are specific.
yeah, it's real, but it's not naturalistic necessarily.
Have you ever had to be with an actor or had to work with an actor who didn't get that, who found that frustrating? Because, I mean, there are actors who would have their own idea about a scene and they would believe in the naturalism of their character, and they may say, my character wouldn't tell this random, weird, funny story, and you'd be like, no, that's part of the package as a whole.
Sure, but I think one of the great advantages of having written the script myself is like if somebody comes up with something that I think is better, I know where my idea came from. I'm like, I couldn't come up with anything better at 3 o'clock in the morning by myself in front of the computer, so try that. But it's usually, actors want the freedom to try different things. So, and actors work in different ways. So it's like, great, try that version, and then let's try one as written. And then trust me that I'll choose the one that, that works best for the character. And oftentimes it might be the version that, is a combination of the two.
Well, freedom and a reason, I find, as well. Like, some actors, it's freedom. Some actors, it's why. Why am I saying this thing? And then that becomes horrible tug of war.
Yeah.
Yeah, that happens too. I'm mostly a very
Especially if you're trying to do something that's off the beaten path as well, language-wise.
Well, and I was going to say also, I think that most confident directors who have a very strong vision are pretty collaborative, and the ones who aren't are usually just insecure. So in a way, I mean, I think with Sebastian, what's great is that
I am right here. just so you know.
is that when it is something, we'll talk, obviously, a lot of times I'll come up and say, I don't know that she would say this for this reason. And I would say, 70% of the time, because he has written it and is a very, very diligent writer, there are more, people who more write stuff and then go, hey, we're going to work on this. Some directors want to just come up with lines in the moment as well. Yeah. That's not really Sebastian, I think, coming from, reading. So I would say 70% of the time, he will convince me of his side and he's actually right. And 30% of the time, he's like, yeah, okay, that's better. So I think that would probably be the percentage.
So I have to ask, your outfits are pretty incredible in the series. How much of a hand did you have in picking and choosing her outfits?
A lot.
Yeah, I really did have. I did have a lot of a hand. A lot of a hand. A large hand.
Yeah.
Sebastian actually had. Many directors, especially male directors that I work with, will be like, you guys deal with that, and I'm going to work on this other stuff. Sebastian is not like that, maybe because he came from South America and a house full of women, but he has a lot of specific references for each character, so it did start there. I'm also very passionate about that, and several pieces of wardrobe in the show, actually including this coat, which in the show is actually a real leopard color, was mine, that I've been saving. It's a vintage Dolce coat for years. And there are several things like that, the white dress in Cuba and certain things like that. But Nancy Gould, our costume designer, really just honed in on it because it's a very specific thing that Sebastian wanted. And it was kind of a moment of growing pains for all of us to try to figure out what that piece, it looked like as a whole. And then everyone kind of found it, and it was really exciting when that happened. I think the interesting thing about Jett is that her aesthetic is how can she go into a place and be invisible? How can she go in somewhere with all these people and leave and have every one of you guys asked who just came and went and go, I didn't really notice.
Unless she needs to be
unless she
visible
needs
and
to be
dress up.
visible, and then she knows exactly how to make her mark look at her immediately, and that's where we get some really colorful costumes.
A couple questions from the audience. Who has a question? Someone has a question? I think right here. Hi.
Hi, Carla. My name is Alex.
Alex.
You have such a diverse career, but at the same time, usually you play strong and smart characters. So I'm curious. It's about you looking it in scripts, or the writers think about you when they write those roles.
That's interesting. I guess it is a combination of both. I mean, I think I think that is some of the material that comes my way. But I don't necessarily look for strong as much as I look for complex and someone who might not be able to be described in one sentence. You know, I think that we are really complicated creatures, all of us. And the thing about acting that I love, and from when I started when I was 13, was that I wanted to be able to give people empathy and allow people to see through another person's eyes. And so I guess for me, in over 3 decades of acting now, I've gotten to look through a lot of different people's eyes, and some of them have been some pretty strong ladies. And my characters give me, you know, Jett taught me a big lesson. I think I was raised as a young girl, not even intentionally from my parents, but just from the world, for my value to be determined by the way in which I was being perceived by the outside world. And Jett keeps her own counsel, and she doesn't care, and she's you know, she's not really introspective, and she's just one foot in front of the other. And so that was a really fun character to play for me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One more.
Hi. So this show has a cast stacked with a lot of really talented and memorable character actors. And I was just wondering for Sebastian, what was it like seeing these actors realize the characters you created? And for Carla, what was it like working alongside with them?
Well, I mean, one of the great pleasures of, again, writing your own thing is seeing then actors make it so much better often than what you meant, you know. And when they veer off, you can actually go, I meant more this, but that translation from, you know, like a screenplay is not a piece of literature, it's not a finished thing, it's only a blueprint for something. So my background comes from acting. I originally studied acting, and that's the one asset that I have as a director, which is I kind of know what they need in their process, even if I'm not as good as them. So to me, that's always the funnest part. You know, there's some directors that say editing is the part that they like. What I like the most is being on set and actually seeing the actors come up with these things. And a lot of times, I'm just laughing, or I'm scared, or I'm crying. I'm actually the first audience member seeing the thing. So to me, it's mostly pure joy, done in very few takes because we never have enough time. So I'm like,
What's your least favorite part of the process?
is that a trick question?
No, not at all, not at all.
Filmmakers, you really
I kind of love making movies. You know, it's interesting because Jett
Rough
was
cut?
such a,
Even like your when you get your rough cut?
oh no, when you first see the assembly of what you have made, that's the most horrible moment, for sure. Even if you're your own, I don't edit my own things, but even the Coen brothers, who are their own editors, the first time you see what you did, you're like, are you kidding me? I thought this was going to be so much better. I meant so much better
Failure.
than this. And then you have to get in there and, like, you know, fix it little by little by little. But, you know,
How much, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt
no.
you again. How much do you find that you can get in there and fix it yourself, or have the ideas to fix it after the rough cut? Or do you need your editor to go in, maybe mess around, show you what he's done to loosen you up a little bit? Because oftentimes what hurts so much about the rough cut is that it's
allegiant to.
to your initial idea, and that's what sort of doesn't work about it.
well, in my case, because I'm not an editor, you know, and I have worked with the same editor, Matt Mayer, on a movie that we did last year called Elizabeth Harvest, and on this project, and this was so, like, you know, 9 hours. It's like 4.5 movies, really. And he's the one that puts it together at first. So I don't know. We'd have to ask him. Maybe he sneakily makes it really bad at first. So I'm like, oh my God, we can't fix it. He's like, I have some ideas. And then he starts fixing it. But it's true that the assembly is supposed to be exactly what you have in the script. And then you're going to, you know, and the problem that usually has is that every scene, not exactly sure how to explain it, seems to have the same weight. Yep. And then once you see what worked and didn't work, it's like, well, this can be much shorter and this can be much longer. And the thrust of the movement is over here, and then that's
rhythm.
very liberating.
Yeah.
Exactly, it's all about rhythm. It's all about music, really.
It really is.
Not putting music, but about musicality and rhythm. I think music is the most underrated element of film, of storytelling in film. And I don't mean the score. I just mean like how music, like obviously the best moments in movies are when image and music go together, and you're actually then in that space between memory and dream and nostalgia and visceral excitement. That is what cinema is. Yeah. So it really is about finding that rhythm. But how do you feel working with the other actors, which was the initial question?
I was just going to say, this was such a joy because we really got to assemble these people so handpicked. And Chris Bacchus, Violet McGraw, Gil Bellows, Rhea Kilstead. There were Bruce Greenwood, a number of people who I had worked with before, who we wanted back, who were amazing. And then there were new people who I hadn't worked with. And I was just looking around, especially because Jett's such an observer. I was just marveling at some of these performances. Haita Jensen, Gentry White, I mean, obviously Giancarlo Esposito. I mean, we had just such an incredible group of actors. Jodie Turner-Smith, Michael Aronoff. I mean, it really, I feel blessed to be in the company of these people.
Guys, congratulations on this opus that you put together yourselves. It's really incredible. It's on Cinemax this Friday night at 10 p.m. Everybody, please watch it. It's so beautiful. Incredible work. Did you want to say something?
I was going to say, a lot of people ask me, like, well, I don't have Cinemax, how do I watch it? But apparently, you can go to Amazon, iTunes, or Hulu and get a subscription to either the show or Cinemax. So the not having, because I asked them, I said, how do people watch Cinemax? And they said, tell people to call their cable provider. I said, hold on, millennials are going to make a phone call? It's like, just give me a button that they can
What's
push.
a cable provider?
Exactly. I don't even know what that is.
Cable?
I'm so confused. So you can get it other ways as well. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, give them a round of applause for coming on the stage. Let's hear it.
Thanks, you guys.